Hey everybody, welcome to our demo video of how to create actual texture in a work of art. As we were discussing throughout the lessons, talking about the differences between implied texture that is seemingly there as one looks at like a two-dimensional work, but is not actually there. Again, it's more of an illusion. So that's implied texture. But today we're going to be taking a look at actual texture. So actual texture that appears in an artwork that you can kind of feel with your sense of touch. So we're going to take a look on how to create different textures through a simple collage project. Okay, so just to review, you're going to need a couple sheets of white paper. You'll need a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, using the edge of a book or a folder will work just fine. You're also going to need a pair of scissors, a pencil, and then some kind of glue, a glue stick or wet glue will work just fine. So let's begin. First thing we need to do is to break down the paper a little bit. So if you have a standard piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, copy paper is fine for this, or 9 by 12, that'll work as well too. So the first thing you want to do, you want to take two sheets and fold them in half. All right, get a nice tight fold in them, and then just go ahead and carefully and gently tear them in half. You got 4 sheets here. That should be enough. If you feel like maybe you need some extra, just go ahead and do that. I have a whole pile of half sheets right here. So we're going to use one as the base of our collage. As I said, we're going to be making 3 different types of actual texture in each of these sections. But before we start that, we want to kind of quickly section out those 3 sections. So if you're working with a ruler, again, always using inches. I have a distance of 9 inches wide. If I divide that by 3, that would be 3 inches per section to get an equal thirds here. I'm just going to go ahead, just draw a line to section out the 1, 2, 3 sections I'm going to be building texture in. Okay, so getting started, as I said, we're going to be working with paper for this one. A lot of folding, cutting, crinkling sorts of approaches in building texture in our work. Okay, so let's get started. Model an easy texture to create. All right, now what I'm going to do to just kind of help measure things, I'm going to take the second half, and I'm just going to also mark out these sections, all right, and then I'll break them down. Now this will just give me the materials that I need on the second sheet by cutting them down to fit equally into each of the 3 sections. So just cutting this down. Remember, your first sheet is really your base, the sheet that you will be pasting your different textures to. All right, so these will be my pieces that I work with. So let's try one section. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time measuring. I'm just going to kind of measure by eye, and I'm just kind of cutting down these little strips. Now, what I'm going to do with the little strips, okay, is kind of create kind of like a grass effect, kind of like a grassy texture in one of the sections. Okay, it's very simple. Just leave those on the side for now. Okay, so I'm going to work with one of these. I'm just going to go ahead and carefully fold it in half. All right, like so. And then with my scissor, I'm going to cut little kind of grass, individual kind of pieces of grass. I'm sure at some point you've done this for a collage and trying to create kind of like a textured effect for grass. All right, there you go. And then simply, in order to get that standing up, we're just going to go ahead and just glue it into place, right? So I think it's a better idea to glue the sheet we're gluing things atop of, gluing that instead of trying to glue the small pieces. It just makes it easier. Make sure you get enough glue down there. All right, and then you would essentially just repeat this process. Okay. So there we go. I got a first layer here. I'm gonna actually double up on a couple of these. This might be something you want to do. Can save time a little bit. So kind of putting two pieces together equally, folding them. All right. And then opening up one side, keeping them again folded together, but just to kind of speed things up. Individual cuts for that grass, and I'm taking my time, making sure I'm getting nice straight cuts. I'm cutting through from one end to the side. As you notice, I'm not cutting through it. I'm leaving the top uncut, or rather the bottom uncut, so that there is a place to glue the texture down to. There we go. And again, just to kind of highlight this, I'm going to go ahead and get some glue glue down, glue a section, and then individually place one at a time. Now, I won't spend all of the video filling up this whole section, but the expectation for you is to fill up each of the 3 sections. All right, there we go. Got that started, and as you can see, you can kind of like play with them and bend them and curl them a little bit. You get a really kind of nice kind of actual texture, something that you can feel. All right, so that's one example of something that you can do. So this is kind of like a grassy kind of feel, I guess you would kind of explain it as. Again, it's very sculptural too. One thing I really like about this project I've done a number of times with other students, is how light works with these. So you see like little shadows that are being cast by the individual grass pieces. And you're just kind of playing with them and trying to build that texture. All right. So I'll use those other strips later, and I'll show you on the next slide the finished product, but just to kind of keep things moving along, I'm gonna move to another section here. So let's see, what kind of texture can I use? Maybe I could use, instead of cutting horizontally, maybe I'll cut vertically, and I'm just gonna cut some strips here. Cutting some strips, and I want to try and go for something that's a little bit more smooth, not as rough in terms of the texture of this section. And again, we want to try and highlight 3 different textures. Okay, so they all shouldn't be the same. There should be, when you touch each of the sections, a difference in each of the sections. Between each other in terms of their texture. All right, so I have this kind of long skinny piece here, so I'm gonna see if I can kind of get maybe like a rolling kind of smooth texture with this one. All right, so I'm gonna glue this. I'm gonna glue, just bring that into frame for you. I'm gonna glue the end, I'm gonna glue the middle, a little glue, and then I'm gonna glue the last ending piece there. And then what I'm going to do is see if I can bring this back into frame. So I'm starting it right there. Feel the glue right about there, and I'm kind of like putting like a little bump between the areas that I've glued, as such. There we go. It's looking pretty good right there. Okay, make sure that you're using glue. Glue stick is the best for a project like this, but if you don't have it, and using the wet glue will just work fine. Just be mindful that you're not using too much glue where it's kind of running all over your page. All right, so let me try that again. So So again, very kind of smooth kind of feel.
You're right, it goes before, so let's
Again, gluing on the end and about the center, and then on the end here. Okay. And again, I'm just kind of repeating that. I started at the top for this one. I'm going to start at the bottom for this one. Kind of feel that glue.
Misses, when you write it the short way, you put a period to show that it's abbreviated. So yes, that does belong there. However, what about what Precious mentioned here? She said to put a comma there. Do you guys agree with that?
Okay. There we go. So we're getting kind of like this kind of bumpy, almost smooth, bumpy kind of texture. All right, I'll model one more for this section, and we'll move on to the last. Again, a little blue in the center, middle, and on the ends. And again, I would, I'll show you the finished product on the next slide, so you can have a good understanding of what's expected. And there we go. I'm just kind of working a pattern in here with how I'm placing them.
Does that sound like a complete thought? Or does it sound like something that we need to add?
All right. So you got a couple textures going there. All right, I'll move to the last section. Let's see. So there's a couple different ways. Maybe like I could use maybe like a weaving pattern. That might work. Probably need an extra piece of paper for that. So just a quick way to kind of measure by eye. Just lining up an extra piece of paper and cutting it. There we go. All right, and I'm sure at some point in elementary school, guys did like a weaving project. So I'm going to use one one piece to make horizontal cuts, just cutting strips. Okay, they're a little crooked, but that's okay. Trying my best to keep them straight. They're a little off, no big deal. And there we go. So I got that for that section. I'm going to try and weave this with some vertical strips. So I'm cutting vertically now on the long side. And just doing my best to try and keep it as straight as possible. If you feel like your cuts are getting very kind of slanted or wonky, take the extra step, use the ruler, draw it out. I'm making it look easy because I've had a lot of practice with stuff like this, but if you're a little unsure and you need a guideline to cut, do it. Okay, so I got some small pieces here that I'm going to start to weave together. So this will be kind of like, it'll be rather smooth, but I also think I'm going to try and add some rough pieces into this. Okay, so I'm going to just start with the first here section. All right. I'm just going to starting off the weave as such, and then I'm going to go ahead. I'm not gluing the whole thing, I'm just gluing the corner right now because I want to be able to slide underneath each of the strips to give that kind of like weaving effect. Alright, so that's lined up pretty good. Alright, the next one, I'm going to use a long strip, but this one's going to go underneath, as I said, underneath. And get that weaving. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this side, and then I'm going to tuck it under again with that kind of like weaving process. I'm actually going to leave a little space between them so we can actually see the weave. All right, and then I would just kind of go down the line. I'd switch back to a smaller one. Now obviously this will be on top over here as such. Again, a little glue. And then I'm going to slide it under that second one and then glue it atop the first vertical one. So you kind of see that pattern starting to take shape. All right, one more time. Using the vertical strip, gluing it down. Just gluing one side. I'm not gluing both sides down because I want to be able to kind of slide things
Was
underneath,
that what
leaving a
happened
little
directly
gap,
after?
lining
He
up
was
with
trapped
the edge
in
of the
his room?
page,
What happened before?
such. And there we go. So we can always kind of feel like a smooth but kind of slightly
Okay.
slightly
So now,
rough
Rainsford
texture in that one.
is
Okay. Now for this one in particular, it might be a good idea to maybe like add another element of texture. So for instance,
what was he doing?
I think if you were to take like a small piece of paper, let me use a small piece of paper, just cut a strip, you know, and then maybe cut it down a little smaller. I think just, you know, crinkling is another one that might work very well in terms of like a texture, a little crumpled piece of paper, finding you know, an edge to glue it down to, and then adding that as part of your one of your overall textures, I think is a good idea. All right, so I mean, there you pretty much have it. As I said, I'm gonna finish this out, so you'll have an exemplar of what a finished piece should look like. If you have any questions, please just reach out right away. You can email me at matthew.piscicano@briacollegeprep.com with any questions. Have fun, and I can't wait to see what you come up with.